Buenas tardes a todos. Welcome everybody. This is going to be the last lecture on this cycle about implication of complexity theory in biology. And this lecture is going to be delivered by Professor Virginia Chaitin. She is a doctor in philosophy, and she is interested in the philosophy of science. Today, she will be telling us about the metabiology, philosophical interpretation and methodological consideration. She is currently a researcher in the Valparaiso Institute of Complex Systems in Chile, and also she is working in the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. So please welcome.
So thank you very much. In the name of metabiology, this very new, interdisciplinary, and I would dare to say paradigm-shifting area of research that has been proposed and created by Professor Gregory Chaitin, I really would like to thank Professor Martin-Delgado for having invited us here for this cycle of lectures, of which this is the last one. And of course, we also thank the Faculty of Physical Sciences and the Madrid Complutense University for this opportunity. It has been a very motivating and productive week. So I would like to start saying that right now the current institutional connection that metabiology has is basically in Brazil. We have really started working on metabiology academically with different groups in Brazil at the Federal University in Rio and at the Politecnica, USP, that is São Paulo, and Unesp, that is a state university in São Paulo. So we have these possibilities of research groups in São Paulo, but the metabiology school is really being founded in Brazil at the Federal University in Rio de Janeiro. So the program for history of science that is at the Federal University in Rio is largely interdisciplinary, which is why we have lines of research varying from simulation to mathematical proofs, as well as implications in the social sciences, because this is really an interdisciplinary program. Whereas at USP it is a polytechnical school, and Unesp is, we are really having contact there with biologists that have brought us to the work by Máximo Sandin that is actually here in Madrid. So we have been very lucky that we have been able to make these connections and to be here in Madrid, being in touch.
What is that about compiler? Can you?
Okay, yes, yeah, right. This is a student that he is just about to defend his PhD thesis, and he is trying to create a compiler for viruses to target individual cases, because in the cases of cancer cells, you cannot really create a universal compiler to work on how the virus is developing. So this is he is still not using metabiology, but he listened to a talk, he attended a talk in another university in Brazil, and he has already inserted the possibility in his PhD work for doing that, but he is going to develop that within this research group on metabiology that we are going to attend the first meeting next year, probably sometime in April or May, but they are already working at a distance with us, let's say. So this is his bold plan in using metabiology, developing the idea he had for his PhD thesis. Okay. So this is just a quick talk overview. I am going to speak a little bit about philosophy of science and how we understand that metabiology is really promoting a paradigm shift, as well as taking advantage of a paradigm shift in biology that is sort of taking place now. A little bit about the methodological aspects, because during these past 3 years, Professor Chaitin and I have realized that thinking a little bit about the methodological aspects of interdisciplinary research has actually been useful and helpful in creating metabiology and trying to develop metabiology better than just staying with the initial analogies and metaphors that you have between the area of biology and computer science or algorithmic information theory. To explore these analogies further, a little bit of the methodology of interdisciplinary research has been actually very useful. So this is why we're also going to talk about the historical changes and developments in the different conceptual frameworks that lead to metabiology, and of course new research directions, because this is what metabiology is all about. So about philosophy of science, I guess most of us, or some of us, have already heard about Popper, Kuhn, Lakatos, and Feyerabend. They were involved in this very intense debate over the rationality of science, especially in the 50s, late 50s, 60s, and 70s, and going into the 80s. And the real issue was, how can you say that science differs from any other form of organizing our experience and trying to use the rational mind to organize this experience in scientific theories? Reason being because there was a lot of debate if, for example, the social sciences were actually sciences or not. Was there a methodology that would actually characterize science as such? And there were, of course, different opinions. And the great issue was, how rational is science? This was also because of so many historical studies that would point at certain passages in science, especially when there are, according to taking advantage of Kuhn's vocabulary, when there are paradigm shifts. It was quite difficult to identify if scientists were being rational or not, according to a scientific rationality that would be given by methodological steps to engage doing scientific research. So there was this rational versus irrational debate in science. How far can we push scientific rationality? Popper came up with this idea of defining the difference between the context of justification and the context of discovery in science, and therefore the context of justification would be the one where scientific rationality really comes into play, and when you justify scientific knowledge is when you are really applying scientific rationality and scientific method. So there was this very sharp demarcation criterion put forward by Popper. Kuhn was not as strict as Popper. He wouldn't, I don't think Kuhn would say that revolutionary periods and paradigm shifts were irrational, but he would say that they would be following a regime that was not the same regime as is followed by the scientific community during normal science, when you do have a paradigm that is very clear and you know more or less which research directions you're taking and more or less what methodology you're going to apply, how you are going to relate the current theory with empirical data, how are you going to perform your experiments. So anyway, Kuhn defined this normal science, which was supposed to be very typical, and revolutionary periods and paradigm shifts were supposed to be a little looser and were things that were not really predictable and within the rules for science would happen, but still he thought that that was not really relevant to philosophy of science, and therefore he also mentioned that there was something at the level of psychology of discovery, and he also suggested that for these aspects of the scientific practice that are not really within scientific methodology should be taken over by social study of scientific communities. As a quick parenthesis, this really gave rise to a new area of research that is the sociology of science that deals with different aspects of the scientific practice regarding let's say, more political aspects of how the scientific community acts and reacts to novelty, or even to an older paradigm, how the power structures interfere in scientific research, and this is something we're not going to really talk about, although we, as scientists, I think we all feel that these variables or these interferences do happen in our everyday life as researchers. Then we come to Lakatos, that really is on the rational side. He says that with hindsight, even periods that are the paradigm shifts, even periods that look like they're irrational, but with hindsight, if you look back, you can promote a rational reconstruction of those periods where scientists didn't really know exactly why they were making certain choices, but they were actually rational and they did lead to the progress of science. He does point out that you can classify research programs into progressive and degenerative, depending on the relation between ad hoc hypotheses and experimental data. So, of course, we all know that when we work in science, we have either a paradigm in Kuhn's vocabulary, or we have a core, a kind of a set of, we can call them premises, that we have to base our work on. And according to Lakatos, it is perfectly rational to have this hard core protecting